What if you could commit the perfect crime? A crime so audacious, so theatrical, so impossibly clean that more than 50 years later, an entire nation is still arguing about who you were and where you went? What if you could steal a fortune, defy the authorities, and then, in your final act, simply disappear? On the night before Thanksgiving, 1971, one man did exactly that. He boarded a commercial airliner, hijacked it with the calm politeness of a disgruntled customer, extorted $200,000, and then, in an act of pure, unbelievable madness, he jumped. He strapped the money to his body, opened the rear door of the Boeing 727 in mid-flight, and stepped out into a raging sub-zero tempest, disappearing into the vast, dark wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. He was never seen again. His body was never found. The money was never recovered, save for one tiny, baffling clue that only deepened the riddle. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, the man who became an American legend by pulling off the only unsolved skyjacking in United States history. Welcome to TSF History, the channel where we dig up the stories that time and the history books tried to forget. If you love unraveling the past's greatest mysteries and the shocking true stories that sound like fiction, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. And make sure to ring that notification bell so you never miss a new investigation. Our story begins on November 24th, 1971. It was the day before Thanksgiving. Airports across America were crowded with people trying to get home to their families. At Portland International Airport in Oregon, the mood was one of routine holiday hustle. At the ticket counter for Northwest Orient Airlines, a man stepped up. He was in his mid-40s, about 6 feet tall, and utterly unremarkable. He wore a dark business suit, a crisp white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. He was carrying a simple black attaché case. He gave his name as Dan Cooper and used cash to purchase a one-way ticket on Flight 305, a short 30-minute hop to Seattle, Washington. He boarded the plane, took his seat, 18C, in the rear of the cabin. He lit a cigarette, this was 1971 after all, and as the Boeing 727 took off, he calmly ordered a bourbon and soda. He paid his tab, just like any other passenger. The flight was just getting to altitude when Cooper casually signaled to the flight attendant, a 23-year-old named Florence Schaffner. She came over. Cooper, without looking at her, handed her a folded piece of paper. Florence was busy. It was a full flight. She assumed it was just a lonely businessman slipping her his phone number. She smiled politely and slipped the note, unread, into her pocket. Cooper leaned into the aisle. "Miss," he said, his voice low and firm, "you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Florence froze. She walked to the galley and unfolded the paper. The note was written in neat, all-capital letters. It read, "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I will use it if necessary. I want you to sit next to me. You are being hijacked." A chill ran down her spine. This was not a joke. She walked back to Cooper's seat. He was wearing dark sunglasses now. "Show me," she whispered. He nodded, and for just a second, he unzipped his briefcase. Florence looked inside. She saw not one, but 8 red cylinders, what looked like dynamite sticks, all bundled together with electrical wire and a large cylindrical battery. It was real. She sat down next to him, as instructed. Cooper was strangely calm, almost serene. He dictated his demands. He wanted $200,000 in negotiable American currency, which he specified meant unmarked, non-sequential $20 bills. He also wanted 4 parachutes, 2 primary civilian-grade chutes, and 2 reserve chutes. And finally, he wanted a fuel truck to be standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane upon arrival. Florence took the demands to the cockpit. The captain, William Scott, immediately radioed the new reality to Seattle-Tacoma Air Traffic Control. The plane was being hijacked. On the ground, a quiet panic set in. The president of Northwest Orient, Donald Nyrop, gave a simple order: cooperate fully. The lives of the 36 passengers and 6 crew members were the only things that mattered. For the next 2 hours, Flight 305 circled Puget Sound, the vast body of water near Seattle. The passengers were told there was a minor mechanical issue causing the delay. They were oblivious, reading magazines and chatting, completely unaware that a life-and-death negotiation was happening just a few rows behind them. In the back, Cooper sat, sipping his bourbon. He was a perfect gentleman to the crew. When Tena Bar sat with him, he was polite, even thoughtful. He noted that Seattle was the home of Boeing. He pointed out the city of Tacoma as they flew over. He even insisted on paying for his drinks. He was not a monster, Tena Bar would later recall. He was kind, he was thoughtful, he was never cruel. This eerie, cold calm was in its own way more terrifying than any outburst of anger. Meanwhile, on the ground, the FBI and Seattle police were in a mad dash. They scrambled to gather the $200,000, pulling 10,000 individual $20 bills from multiple Seattle area banks. They photographed every single bill to create a record of the serial numbers. The entire bundle was stuffed into a heavy canvas bank bag. It weighed 21 pounds. They also sourced the parachutes from a local skydiving school. Cooper's demand for 4 parachutes was tactically brilliant. It created uncertainty. Did he have an accomplice on board? Was he planning to take a hostage? The real reason was simpler and colder. By demanding 4, he ensured the authorities wouldn't try to give him 3 dummy chutes and 1 good one. He was forcing them to give him functional equipment. At 5:39 p.m., Flight 305 finally landed at SeaTac Airport. The pilot taxied the plane to a remote, brightly lit and isolated part of the tarmac, far from the main terminals. Cooper ordered the shades of the passenger cabin to be drawn to prevent police snipers from getting a clear view. He then ordered 1 airline employee, and one only, to approach the plane. The exchange was made. The 21-pound bag of money and the bundle of parachutes were handed over to Tena Bar through the 8th stairs, the unique built-in staircase at the tail of every 727. Once the money and chutes were on board, Cooper held his end of the bargain. He ordered the 36 passengers, along with Florence Schaffner and 2 other crew members, to be released. They filed off the plane, confused by the delay, but completely unaware that they had just been the hostages in a federal crime. But D.B. Cooper was far from finished. This was only Act 1. He now ordered the pilots to take off again. His new destination? Mexico City.
But he had very, very specific instructions for this flight. And it was these instructions that baffled the FBI and proved that Cooper was not some amateur. He demanded they fly at a low altitude, no higher than 10,000 feet. He demanded they fly at a slow speed, no faster than 150 knots, or about 170 miles per hour. This is barely above the plane's stall speed. To achieve this, he ordered the landing gear to be left down, and the wing flaps to be set at a 15-degree angle. This was not a random request. This was the precise configuration needed to keep the plane stable at a low speed and, crucially, to keep the cabin unpressurized. He knew this aircraft. He knew exactly what he was doing. Before takeoff, he also ordered the pilots to leave the aft staircase unlocked. The flight crew protested. The aft stair door, when opened, would trigger a massive warning light in the cockpit. "That's how you'll know I've gone," Cooper said. At 7:40 p.m., the plane took off from Seattle with only Cooper, Captain Scott, the co-pilot, the flight engineer, and Tena Bar, who had volunteered to stay. The new plan was to fly south to Reno, Nevada to refuel, and then continue to Mexico City. The U.S. Air Force scrambled 2 F-106 fighter jets to tail the 727, but it was a dark, stormy night with 0 visibility, and the 727 was flying so slow the jets had to struggle to keep pace, eventually losing visual contact. Inside the plane, Cooper told Tina Mucklow to go to the cockpit, close the curtain, and not come out. She was the last person to ever see him. His final words to her were a simple "thank you." The flight crew waited, their hearts pounding. They were alone in the cockpit, flying a crippled bird, blind in a storm with a hijacker in the back. At approximately 8 p.m., a warning light flashed on the control panel. The aft stair door was open. A few minutes later, at 8:13 p.m., as the plane flew through a violent thunderstorm somewhere over the border of Washington and Oregon, the crew felt the plane's tail suddenly jerk upwards, a change in pressure consistent with something, or someone, leaving the aircraft. D.B. Cooper was gone. He had tied the 21-pound bag of money to his body, strapped on a parachute, and, in a feat of incredible nerve or sheer insanity, stepped off the stairs into a 200-mile-per-hour wind in the black of night into a freezing cold storm over one of the most rugged, dense, and unforgiving wildernesses in North America. When the plane landed safely in Reno 2 hours later, it was surrounded by a SWAT team. They stormed the plane. It was empty. The only things D.B. Cooper left behind were 2 of the parachutes and his black clip-on tie. The investigation, codenamed NORJAK for Northwest Hijacking, began immediately. It would become one of the longest, most expensive, and most frustrating manhunts in FBI history. The FBI's first task was to figure out where he landed. They calculated a probable jump zone, a massive 26-square-mile area of dense forest, mountains, and ravines near Mount St. Helens. The search was exhaustive. The Army sent in ground troops. Helicopters combed the canopy. They searched for months. They found nothing. No body, no parachute, no money bag, no shred of evidence that he had ever been there. The FBI began to believe that the perfect crime was not so perfect. Their official theory became, and remains, that Cooper could not have survived the jump. They argued he was no expert. An experienced skydiver would never jump at night in a storm with a 20-pound weight strapped to him, wearing a suit and loafers into a forest. The wind chill at 10,000 feet would have been 70 degrees below zero. He would have been jumping blind. He likely died on impact or of exposure, his body and the money scattered and reclaimed by the wilderness, lost forever. But if he died, where was the body? Where was the parachute? Where was the money? With no body, the investigation turned to suspects, and there were thousands. The FBI investigated over 1,000 credible suspects, but a few names rose to the top. There was Richard McCoy, Jr., a Vietnam veteran who, just 5 months after Cooper's jump, pulled off an almost identical copycat hijacking. He jumped from the back of the 727 with $500,000. But McCoy was caught. And unlike Cooper, McCoy was a known skydiver. While the similarities were eerie, McCoy was eventually ruled out. He had a confirmed alibi for the day of the Cooper hijacking. There was Dwayne Weber, a career criminal who, on his deathbed in 1995, told his wife, "I am Dan Cooper." His wife became convinced, pointing to a life of secrets, a bad knee, which he claimed he got jumping out of a plane, and his uncanny resemblance to the police sketch. But the FBI found no hard evidence, and his DNA did not match samples the FBI had collected from the plane. And then there was Kenneth Christensen, a former World War II paratrooper and, most intriguingly, an employee of Northwest Orient Airlines. He was a purser. He knew the 727 inside and out. He fit the description. He loved bourbon and smoked. His own brother became suspicious after his death, claiming Christensen had a mysterious large sum of money just after the hijacking. But again, no hard evidence. The case was a revolving door of promising leads that led to dead ends. And then there was the tie, the one piece of hard evidence Cooper left behind. For decades, it sat in an evidence bag. But in 2011, a team of citizen scientists was given access to it. Using an electron microscope, they made a shocking discovery. Embedded in the fibers of the tie were over 100,000 particles of rare earth minerals, specifically pure unalloyed titanium and antimony. These weren't particles you just pick up from the street. In 1971, this combination was incredibly rare, used only in very specific high-tech manufacturing. This suggested Cooper wasn't just some random thug. He may have been an engineer, a manager, or even an executive at a chemical plant, or most chillingly, at an aerospace company. The man who knew exactly how to cripple a 727 may have been a man who helped build them. The case was a complete, baffling mystery, and for 9 long years it seemed that's how it would stay. Then, in 1980, the impossible happened. A 9-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was on a family vacation picnicking on the banks of the Columbia River at a spot called Tena Bar. He was raking the sand to build a fire pit when his hands hit something. It was 3 bundles of cash. The bills were rotten, partially decomposed, and held together by elastic bands. But they were, unmistakably, $20 bills. Brian's family turned the money over to the FBI. The agents checked the serial numbers. Their hearts must have stopped. The serial numbers matched. It was D.B. Cooper's ransom money. After 9 years, $5,800 of the stolen fortune had washed up on a riverbank. This should have been the clue that broke the case wide open. Instead, it made the mystery worse, because Tena Bar was more than 20 miles south of the official flight path. It was nowhere near the established search zone.
So, how did the money get there? Theory 1. The river. Did Cooper land in a river or creek that fed into the Columbia, and the money bag broke open, with these bundles washing downstream over 9 years? Possible, but scientists who studied the river's flow said it was highly unlikely for the bundles to have stayed together. Theory 2. The dredging. Was the money scooped up from the riverbed by a dredging machine and then deposited on Tena Bar? This is a popular theory, but it still means Cooper landed in the water, far from where the FBI thought he did. Theory 3. The burial. Did Cooper survive the jump, land near Tena Bar, and bury the money there, intending to come back for it, but died of his injuries or exposure nearby? Theory 4. The plant. Was the money planted? Did an accomplice, or even Cooper himself years later, toss a few bundles into the river to throw the FBI off the scent? The discovery of the money at Tena Bar answered one question: is the money still out there? But it opened a dozen more. It's the only piece of the puzzle ever found in the wild, and it makes no sense. In the end, D.B. Cooper achieved a strange kind of immortality. He changed the airline industry forever. After his jump, the FAA ordered all Boeing 727s to be retrofitted with a device that made it impossible to open the aft stairs in flight. This simple spring-loaded latch is known even today as the Cooper vein. In 2016, after 45 years of dead ends, the FBI officially closed the active D.B. Cooper investigation. They announced they were moving resources to other more urgent cases. They admitted defeat. The perfect crime, it seems, remained perfect. So what really happened to D.B. Cooper? Did he die, as the FBI believes, a shattered body lost to the trees and animals of the Pacific Northwest, his skeleton and the remaining $194,000 still lying out there waiting to be found? Or did he live? Is it possible that the legend is true, that he was an ex-paratrooper, a survival expert who knew exactly where he was,
that he landed, hid his tracks, buried or recovered his money, and simply walked away. Did he melt back into society, living a quiet life, a millionaire hiding in plain sight, smiling every time he saw his own face on a wanted poster? The truth is, we will never know. D.B. Cooper is not a man anymore. He's a myth. He's a question mark. He is the ghost in the American night sky, a symbol of rebellion, mystery, and audacity. A man who took a gamble, defied the world, and vanished forever. The case is closed, but the mystery is wide open. What do you think happened? Did D.B. Cooper survive the jump, or did the wilderness claim him? And who was he? Let us know your best theories down in the comments. We read every one of them. Thanks for watching TSF History. If you enjoyed this dive into one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries, please hit that like button. Share this video with a friend who loves a good story, and please make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the next one. We'll see you in the past.